Seth May-Patterson, and I'm one of the coaches that's going to be giving you this instructional video on the viola. So I'd like to point out a couple parts of the viola. So I'm going to start with just the actual instrument. I'm not going to talk about the bow yet. As you look at the viola, it looks very similar to a violin, except for it's gigantic. A normal full-size violin is about 14 inches long, and my viola is actually very large compared to other violas. It's at 17 and 3/16 of an inch. So it's pretty big. And one kind of funny fact is that if the C string, our lowest string, if it were as long as it's supposed to be, the actual viola would have to be 20 inches or even longer. So it's actually it's almost impossible to have a full-size viola for the length of the string. You'd have to put it in between your knees to play it, which is how some other kinds of violas are played in the past, but not the traditional modern viola. So to start, we have the scroll, which is this curly kind of section here. It doesn't really do anything except for it is at the end of the viola, and it kind of holds the peg box, which is where all of the strings are tied. So you can kind of see here. These black knobs are called pegs. For right now, you probably don't want to be turning or twisting them too much because it tunes the instrument in very large segments, and if you turn them up too much, you could actually pop the string. So don't worry about tuning those pegs quite too much yet. This long black part is called the fingerboard, and as you were watching, that's where you put your fingers, and you can actually go all the way up the fingerboard, which is pretty fun. Not a lot of violas have to go up the fingerboard very much, certainly not this high. That's more of a violin thing, but we do train ourselves to practice to be able to climb up the fingerboard if we need to. The viola has 4 strings. Our highest string is the A string, next is the D string, next is the G string, and then finally the C string. So you might notice that the A, D, and G string are exactly the same as a violin. A violin, their lowest string is the G string. Since we have the C string, we actually have the same string setup as a cello. So it's exactly the same as a cello, except for it's an octave higher than a cello, which is kind of cool. So this is the body of the viola. There's the front, and then there's the back. And these openings here are called F-holes. They allow the sound to come out of the instrument. This is the bridge. Looks kind of like that. It supports the strings and holds them up, so it creates the tension on the strings, which gives them the pitch. This is the tailpiece. Just sits there, doesn't do very much except for holding the strings nice and tight. I have one fine tuner on my viola right there. It's for my A string. Some instruments have all 4 fine tuners, and that's fine if you do. This is the chin rest. You want to put pretty much the side of your jaw, not your chin, so it looks kind of silly if you do that, but it's really the side of your jaw. You just kind of comfortably sit it here. This is my shoulder rest, and it definitely looks different than some of yours. This one's made of wood. The brand is called Mach 1, but there's a bunch of different brands, there's a bunch of different styles, so that's the part of the playing a violin or a viola that's customizable. My shoulder rest doesn't want to go on. You can find a shoulder rest that best fits your shoulder. Some people have really long necks, and so they need to, and actually I have a friend that plays, and her chin rest is actually about this high off of the instrument. Mine is not, but some people need that for their own posture. The chin rest is a piece that you can customize as well. So mine is off to the left. Some violas have a chin rest that sits right in the middle over this tailpiece. This is the bow. So there are a few different parts of the bow. The tip is right at the end here. The part here you can see is kind of gold. My bow is my favorite, very special bow. And so mine has gold, but the tip of the bow can be made of sometimes plastic, sometimes bone, sometimes different kinds of materials. It just depends on your kind of bow. The hair is from horses. The horses have a bit of a haircut, and so it comes from the tail of the horse. And you do not want to touch the hair. I'm sure that your teachers have told you that. It's pretty much the one spot on the instrument that you don't want to touch, because we have oil on our hands as human beings, and we don't want to get that oil on the hair because then it stops it from being able to grip the string. So don't touch the hair. You just want to put rosin there. And this wooden part here is the stick of the bow. This whole area here is called the frog. I don't know why it's called the frog. It doesn't look like a frog, but it is called the frog. And then this is the screw. This is what tightens the bow. So as you're looking at the bow, if you turn it to your left towards the hair, you're going to loosen the bow, loosen the tightness of the bow. So you can see as I loosen it, the hairs get really close to the stick. That is how you want to pack up your instrument, and that'll be in a later video as well. But you want to always be sure that when you're done playing, you loosen the bow. Otherwise, it can hurt the wood. Think of your muscles. If you just sat there and you flexed your arm and you sat there for the whole night, you would probably get pretty tired and you might have a cramp or something in your arm. So you don't want to do that to the bow. Going back to the screw, you can turn it to the right. And as I turn slowly, hopefully you can see the hairs gradually get further away from the stick because the stick is tightening. This is my viola case. It has a kind of cushy black extra wrapping around it. It's actually meant to protect the case. If you don't have one, that's totally fine. I do a lot of traveling with my instrument. So, you know, when I fly on an airplane or I'm just out in the weather, it makes me feel really good to have an extra coating for it. This is the actual case. It also still might look different. There's shaped cases, there's different colored cases, there's cases that have all different kinds of decorations and shapes, but most cases have latches. And so you want to find your latch. Some have them in the middle and also along the side and also at the bottom sometimes. But I just have two. So you just go ahead and hit those latches. Open the case. And so your bow should be somewhere here. Hopefully it'll be here. It normally has a little thing that it sits in. So you want to be sure that it's comfortably sitting there. It also has a little notch that you want to turn. Notice mine is turned up and down. So if you don't have it turned up and down, then when you close the case, the bow can just come right out and fall. So every time you put the instrument away, you want to be sure that you turn it. So it sits just like that. You probably will have a blanket. These are also very important because they help cover the instrument. You want to also think like you're putting the instrument away. It's kind of like going to sleep. You want to have a blanket so it's nice and comfortable to sit in the case. Also, in case you don't latch your bow, if the bow does tend to fall, or happen to fall, having a blanket there will help protect the body of the instrument as well. But just remember to latch your bow. So you take the blanket out and put it anywhere nearby so you don't lose it. If you can see inside, the viola is just sitting there. And a lot of cases have a protection support around the neck. And so mine is just Velcro. So you want to un-Velcro that so it's free. And then you lift the viola straight up out of the case. And then you want to put it, I don't know, just somewhere comfortable. The other thing that some cases have is room for a shoulder rest. Some cases don't have room for a shoulder rest, so you might have to bring maybe a music bag or something like that, but especially the shaped cases, sometimes they don't have room for a shoulder rest. But if you get a case that is more oblong, then it'll probably have as room for shoulder rest. So you want to take out the shoulder rest, and in order to set it up correctly, you want to have the shoulder rest facing this way. So notice there's a part of the shoulder rest that comes up, and then there's a part of the shoulder rest that dips down. So you want to have the part that dips down facing to the right. And then as you put it on the instrument, you want to flip the instrument around, and on the right side of the instrument is where you put that part of the shoulder rest. So you put one part of the legs on, other part just wraps around here. So it should sit very comfortably. Be sure it's not too tight. This shoulder rest has a couple extra holes in it, so if I needed to make it bigger, which I will not, because as I said, my viola is pretty big already, then you can adjust it. So just be sure it's set to the right setting so it's not pulling too hard on the instrument. It should fit pretty snug and secure, but you shouldn't have to force it on at all. And then, come over here, you undo the notch so the bow is free, and then you pull the bow out. And then just as we talked about, you look at if as you're facing the bow, you have the hairs on the left side of you. You turn the screw to the right to tighten the bow. And while we're doing this, don't tighten the bow too much. I think I might have said that, but just in case I didn't, don't tighten it too much because when you look at the bow, you want to see the stick and you want to see that there's a slight curve that curves towards the hair. If you tighten the bow and you do it too much and it looks like it's completely straight, that's too tight. If it gets really hot and humid, since it's wood, the bow will expand and the wood will expand, and sometimes you'll just be playing and then you'll look at your bow and it'll be super tight, in which case you need to loosen it again. If you do it way too much, and I'm not going to do it to my bow because I like this bow and I use it a lot, but if you do it way too much, then the stick of the bow will actually be turned outwards, and that's really bad for the bow because you're bending it backwards in a way it's not supposed to go. So just tighten it to the point where the bow is a little bit away, the bow hair is a little bit away from the stick, and you have a nice little curve in the bow. Also, You want to be sure that if you put the bow on the string and you press down a little bit, that the stick does not go straight into the string. If the bow is too loose, then the stick will go straight on top of the hair and there won't be any tension. You want a little bit of tension in the bow, so you can do articulations and you can bounce the bow, or you could do a really long note. You could put as much weight into the bow as you'd like to create a constant, powerful sound. So I think that's everything for this video. Stay tuned for the next one.